We're going to start off with the Secrets deck, of course, the Paladin deck. And we've already alluded to how powerful it is. And in the meta report, I know Tempest Storm's meta report, it's been number one since forever now, since TGT came out. Let me pull it up real quick. Where is it? All right, there we go. And kind of have the Mysterious Challenger next to it as well, so that we can just look at the, obviously the most powerful card in the deck. So two variations here. That one's a little bit more the aggro variation, while the other is more the mid-range and has some of the later cards like Tyrion and Dr. Boom. So let's talk about the deck. Let's just talk about why it's so powerful. Reynad, do you want to start us off?
Yeah, well, it's just a proactive linear strategy. It plays a lot of good cards, a good curve. So early in a metagame when people are playing experimental stuff, just having like a proactive, consistent game plan is going to perform very well. On top of that, it introduces like 5 cards to the game that for 2 years nobody has played against. So every single time you play Mysterious Challenger, your opponent's inevitably going to attack, which is going to make the Noble Sacrifice, Avenge, bring back your 2/1 thing happen. And like all of a sudden you're grossly far behind on the board, and it's just when you naturally draw the secrets, there's secrets that people aren't used to playing against yet because they hadn't seen playing constructed up to this point. So like because of all those reasons, the deck is positioned really well right now. And Mysterious Challenger is definitely like super powerful. Anytime you play it, it just feels like the best 6-drop in the game. Like it feels better than playing Emperor most of the time, and it's it's just a good deck overall, and it remains to be seen if it sticks around for a long time or if the matchups kind of shift to the point where it's weaker and the people get better at playing around secrets and stuff. Like
Trump?
To some extent, this is a surprise. So I'm going to, I guess, start with why it's a surprise. It's not a surprise that this is doing well because Face Paladin was a really good deck, and this is basically the left
one is
basically Face Paladin except with some worse draws sometimes, and then sometimes you get the Mysterious Challenger and you don't draw the secrets, and you have a really really good 6-drop. But one of the reasons why this is a surprise, as why it's rated the #1 deck, is because of the lack of Patron Warrior around, and you would think that. Like right now, I think this deck is just all the rage, and Dragon Priest is also pretty popular. If you want to win, I think you just play Patron Warrior right now. But for some reason, there seems to have been like a ceasefire of Patron. Like everyone's just kind of agreed, all right, we've had enough Patron. It's not that Patron is even a bad deck. It's actually one of the strongest it's ever been just because of the this deck and the Priest deck being around. But it's just people aren't playing it, probably because they're tired of it. They want to try the new stuff. This deck could get knocked down if Patron ever becomes popular again on ladder, and it will someday, I'm sure. As for this deck, I don't think it's a surprise that it's good. It's just Face Paladin, except with like an extra hat trick, literally.
Brian?
I mean, I think this deck is very powerful. I agree with Trump that a lot of its sort of prominence is due to it being new, and people who had played hundreds and thousands of games of Patron Warrior over the past few months just wanting to do something different. You always see new strategies sort of overrepresented at the beginning of a new set's existence, and I mean that's one of the reasons that sort of powerful linear aggressive decks too, like Reynad was saying, tend to be very effective because people are still tuning these things. They still have these new ideas they're exploring that aren't fully realized yet. So I think that this deck is not as good as people are suggesting it is, both because I don't think it's actually that powerful, and because I think that a lot of it is being sort of colored by, as Trump was saying, the lack of Patron Warrior decks, and also just people's inexperience playing against it. Like my success rate against the Secret Warrior deck in the past like 7 days has shifted dramatically because I've just like figured out how to play against it. They're like, when you, like Reynad was saying, it's like, yeah, people just like, okay, I'll attack. It's like, oh wait, no, I know what happens in these situations because I've been here and figured it out before. So you just play against it differently, and you can end up winning a lot more than if you're just like, I guess I'll attack your guy. Oops, now I'm dead.
Right. Actually, when you attack efficiently, not that great for them a lot of times.
Yeah.
Depending on.
Well, in many cases, you just don't attack, and it's actually better.
Yeah,
for you.
that's true. That's another thing too.
It's like, yeah, like you attack and it's like, oops, it was avenged. Now I can't stop that minion. I'm dead. And when it's like, okay, well, I'll just give up 2 damage in the possibility that it's avenged, and I won't give you a buffed minion. And now I can wait until I have the resources to deal with that, and suddenly the game is totally different now that I understand what I'm up against.
I think a big part of the issue is like I see a lot of Reddit posts and stuff where people complain about Patron, for example, because of like they see the once in a while high level game where the double frothing berserker kills somebody from a ridiculous life total. But when you actually, I think Blizzard mentioned this or somebody, Patron's actual win rate on ladder, it's like one of the most terribly performing decks across all ranks. It's like sub 40% or something for its win rate.
Wow.
And that's because the only time Patron is the best deck in the game is when you're like an upper half legend player that's put hundreds of games into the deck, because it's really hard to play. Whereas something like Mysterious Challenger Paladin, it's a leper gnome deck. Anybody can smash their face against a keyboard and like, I don't know, click on stuff and they'll win games with this. But with a Patron deck, when they're like playing Frothing Berserker on curve and wondering why they're losing, it's just never going to be as popular because it's more difficult to win with, I think. So that's a big part of why decks like this will always be overrepresented compared to something like Patron, which is objectively better if everyone plays perfectly, but in the real world, that doesn't happen. So
between the two of these, just the more aggro version, which do you like better?
The slow one's better, I think. It's a lot better.
Yeah, I have been more impressed by the versions that aren't quite as all in, like that have the follow up, whether it's Boom Tyrion or like I've seen some with even like Shredders or even Murloc Knights, kind of attacking from all angles. That you have this tempo game that you can play with your secrets and your early drops, and then you have this sort of value / power late game that you also have access to.
I actually think both are legitimate. I think I actually just think both are good. The face spell, and it's cool because there are 2 versions. It's kind of like 2 new decks have spawned. There's the aggro Challenger Paladin. There's the non-aggro mid-range Challenger Paladin. But they have 2 different flavors. I think I like the face one more, but they are both good, and they just have different win rates against the field.
Okay, yeah, so if you're just starting out and want to play a deck that's not too expensive either, that's the nice thing about this deck for a lot of folks, is that you could craft it for a reasonable price. Mysterious, or the Riddler, or what's the official name for this? Is the Riddler Paladin or Crystal Street Paladin?
Name. I don't know
or
where
Secret Paladin. Yeah, exactly. But whatever, the Secret Paladin. Okay,
I like that name. Riddler is really good, I think.
Riddler, you like the Riddler Paladin? Okay. All right, so next deck we're going to discuss is we're going to jump to the Shaman deck, and this one's one that I saw Strivecrow playing. I don't know, maybe about 5 days ago, and thought it was kind of interesting. We haven't talked much about Shaman actually so far today. So, what do you guys think about the whole Totem Shaman build? Powerful? Will it reach the top here?
I do think it's hilarious that we've finally reached the point where people are unironically playing Totemic Might.
Right.
But I mean, I think that it sort of suffers from many of the same things that Shaman has historically suffered from, which is a lot of reliance on random elements, whether it's from the hero power or Lightning Storm or now Tuskar Totemic, and just a very difficult time ever sort of catching up if it falls behind, which is particularly true of the totem-based ones, because once you actually are like really heavily invested in all these totems, you have to be able to protect them, and if you can't, your entire strategy falls apart.
Mm-hmm. Right.
It's just underpowered when it comes down to it. There's nothing it does that's degenerate or unfair. It's a mid-range deck with lower power level cards than something like Paladin. As good as Totem Golem is, it's not enough. It's probably an objectively worse card than Muster for Battle, and like it just needed better cards. Honestly, like it's great that it got Tuskar Totemic, and it's great that it got Totem Golem, but it needed like 4 of those instead of 2 to become a really high tier deck. Thunderbluff Valiant's a good card, but it's not like changing your matchups or anything. But if it got like I wanted like Totem Bro, 1 mana 2/2 Totem, like that would have been card that
Totem Bro.
Totem Bro. All right.
Yeah.
you play him and then
Good
you
name.
attack too, and you point out Totem Golem, you follow it up with Totem Bro. I don't know what you'd call it. I didn't play World of Warcraft, but Totem.
It's probably Totem Bro. I think that's canon.
Trump.
This is one of the decks that got the most stuff. Like you can actually see from this list, it has 6 cards: Totem Golem, Totemic, Tuskar, and the Thunderbluff Valiant. And I was like, oh yeah, this is gonna be pretty good. It was the first deck I tried out, but I actually ultimately came to the same conclusion that it's basically a mid-range Paladin except worse. So it obviously does a few things better. Hex is really good. Lightning Storm is debatably better than Consecration. It's really close, and but it's just overall the Paladin stuff is just slightly better. The cards are of higher quality, and they both try to do the same thing. So therefore, if one is usually better, then you would usually run the Paladin one instead.
I also think that the popularity of Paladin is particularly bad for Shaman. Like the Paladin decks, I think match up very, very well against the Totem Shaman decks because they do have the ability to generate early board presence that's generally higher quality. Muster for Battle is a really difficult card for Shaman decks to deal with. Their only good answer to it is Lightning Storm, which is horrifically inefficient. So I think that maybe if the metagame did shift away from Paladin being quite as popular, that maybe there's place for the Totem Shaman decks to grow into. I do think that Thunderbluff Valiant is actually maybe the most powerful new card. Like Totem Golem and Tuskar Totemic are like these nice early plays that were among the things that Shaman lacked. But Thunderbuff Valiant can just kill your opponent incredibly quickly. You can have a board of absolutely nothing except for like a couple of O2s, and in 2 turns your opponent dies. That card generates a ton of threat very, very quickly. But I do think that this is just a deck that, like you guys are saying, it feels like a worse version of mid-range Paladin, at least in the matchups that really are popular right now.
Okay, so sad face for Shaman still, at least for the time being. Hopefully we'll see some more.
It's particularly sad too because Mech Shamans is way worse now too because there's far more aggressive decks.
Yeah,
and in
that's
particular,
right.
like Paladin, like aggro Paladin, is like a pretty terrible matchup for Mech Shaman as well. And even like one of the best matchups for Mech Shaman, like Druid, which is popular, is more popular now. It's actually even gotten worse because both Darnassus Aspirant and Living Roots give the Druid deck more early game interaction, which was where the Mech Shaman deck really punished them before.
Mm-hmm. Any potential for a different type of Shaman deck that might emerge that you can see in the horizon, maybe?
Maybe Dragon Shaman, who knows?
Yeah, Dragon Shaman's not bad.
Okay.
There was space for it with cards like Elemental Destruction and stuff, but they didn't push them hard enough, and they really had an opportunity to make like a good AoE effect for once, which Hearthstone doesn't really like have the best one. All the good AoEs are like 2-card combos in Hearthstone, like Frost Nova Doomsayer or Quality Consecrate. So there was room for like Elemental Destruction to just not suck, but it sucked. So if it had like 10 less overload, that would have been space for a new Shaman deck that was good, but
it is actually very strange that Elemental Destruction has such a high cost and overload when you just compare it to like Hellfire.
Mm-hmm. Right.
It's like or like Shadow Flame. It's very weird to me that the best single card AoE effects are both just in Warlock, just in the same class, which also happens to be the class with the best hero power to play a control deck. So it's like, what's going on here? Why can't some other classes get some of this action?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's definitely weird.
I actually think there's an outside chance still that Malagos Ancestors Call deck.
Mm-hmm.
There's been some people playing it here and there. It doesn't look like it's going to work, but there's that slight chance, I'd say.
Yeah, I saw Day 9 playing it a lot one day, and a few other folks. But yeah, that one could be interesting, or maybe an old Zeus Shaman with the spell damage or whatever. Could be interesting. Okay, next deck we're going to discuss is Dragon Priest, and we've talked a lot about it actually already, but I figured we'd kind of dive in a little bit as to why. And I would normally start with Brian, but since we have Reynad's Dragon deck on here, Brian, I'll have you follow up. Reynad, so why don't you explain your Dragon deck real quick.
I mean, I
here.
built this 30 minutes after the set went live, and it was pretty close to what I think is like the list I'd play now.
Yeah.
The only difference is like the Rend is not well positioned because of the popularity of Mysterious Challenger and Patron. I've been personally seeing a lot of Patron, even if other people haven't. So it doesn't have enough targets and enough matchups. So I replaced that with Light Bomb, which I definitely think is important. I cut the Cultists all together for like second Shadow or Death and something else. I think it was a second Death and like a Sylvanas, and then the Ysera I replaced with Confessor Palantris. So
okay.
it's still a similar strategy, but yeah, that I think is really good. And yeah, I'm super impressed with it. I think Dragon Priest is very high tier. I think like once you go past the top 2 or 3 broken decks, it's very good, especially when you factor in the matchups. It's good against other good decks. If you're playing double Light Bomb, I think you're actually favored against Patron, which is cool. Like I think that it's favored against Mysterious Challenger. It's just a good deck. I like it a lot, and a big part of it is that it finally has a 2-drop.
Brian?
Yeah, I mean, I think that Dragon Priest is very, very good. The biggest problem that Priest has fundamentally had through most of Hearthstone's history is that it has been forced to basically play reactively because it didn't have good minions like in the early mid game to actually apply pressure. Most of the quality cards it had were very sort of reactive and combo related, like things like Blademaster Circle or Akanai Circle or whatever else that were all these things that you have to have these interlocking pieces. They're also contingent on what your opponent is doing. And there are so many good cards against reactive cards, like very powerful Death Rattle minions, that even when those things came together, it wasn't necessarily even that good. Whereas Dragon Priest, it's like you just play your game. You play a guy, and then you play another guy, and maybe you buff a guy, and then you heal a guy. And having these really high value minions that you can play early on really allows the Dragon Priest deck to take advantage of the class's hero power, because the Priest hero power is at its best by far when you're actually using it to establish board presence and to sort of snowball the game. And this is a deck that can do that way better than pretty much any other that I have played in Hearthstone. Like the number of people who concede against me on like turn 4 or turn 5 is like way higher than any other deck that I've ever played.
Yeah, definitely. Right now I'm actually doing a free-to-play Priest, and I am feeling the pain of not having a 2-drop. Just those 3/2 Shrink Masters and the 3/2 Wild Pyromancers. Sometimes you just can't get them on the board, you lose the presence, and then you find yourself struggling to catch back up. And there was a moment where Undertaker Priest was a thing, which was also a proactive Priest deck, and that was good. And I'm glad that Priest has this new playstyle as well. I think it's quite strong.
So Brian, or Trump and Brian, are your Dragon decks pretty similar to this? What are your differences in the one that you play?
I mean, it's the versions. I've been playing a ton of different versions. I mean, I've mostly been playing some version of Dragon Priest or Dragon Mage since TGT came out. That's the vast majority of my gameplay, and I've gone through a ton of different versions. Just yesterday, I was actually playing experimented with the version that Dark Wanix played in the EU Last Call tournament that actually had the Lightbane Darkbane sisters.
Yeah.
And played Divine Spirit, to just have a bunch of these buff effects that also happen to go well with a lot of the dragon things. There's a lot of different directions that you can take with Dragon Priest, which is one of the interesting things about it. I definitely agree with Reynad in that certain builds of the deck, like playing Light Bomb, for instance, makes you a lot stronger against, say, the Secret Paladin decks. So it's a deck that is fundamentally like proactive and powerful, but has a lot of spots that you can actually tune it depending on what sort of metagame you're going up against.
Okay. Trump, you? Same with you? I mean, it's pretty similar to this deck, the version you play? Or at least Reynad's version?
Yeah, for the most part. I would find myself very hard-pressed to cut Ysera, though.
I didn't cut Ysera.
Pretty much my main.
Yeah,
The card
played
has been so
games.
good, and like I kind of want to try out Pale Trust now. That's been hyped so much, but it's like
good.
Ysera. Oh, how do I cut her? I'd probably just add both because I like playing that heavy.
Yeah,
when I'm playing on ladder, I do like to play, make the possibility of having totally, powerful blowouts where I just have all these super powerful cards all at once.
Yeah, Sarah might be right. I'm not sure. I did like the math on the card because I wasn't sure about it, and in 12 games I played it once, and I died And yeah, I don't know. So maybe that was just being results oriented. I'm not sure.
There a particularly interesting play, like just having you guys having played this deck so much? Any interesting play that maybe a beginner might not know right off the top that's very key to swinging the tempo or anything like that?
I mean, one of the most important things with this deck is that you actually will keep high cost minions in your opening hand far more often than in other decks, just because it's so important to enable your early minions. Like, I will keep Ysera in my opening hand if my other two cards are Twilight Well Formist Agent, because it's so important that I'm able to, enable those in the early turns of the game. Even if Ysera is literally a blank card that never gets played, ensuring that I'm actually hitting my on curve, like, powered minions because I'm getting their battle cry effects is just worth it.
Yeah, I think it's important. Like with Velen's Chosen, don't play that until you're actually killing a minion with it. Like, don't just play it on the board. That's a really interesting card to time. Because if you play it too early, you walk into a silence. But if you have like a really good curve, sometimes you do just play it and swing it face, because otherwise you won't play it till like turn 7. So yeah, that's like one of the cards that's harder to play with. But really, it's a pretty simple deck. Like, you're not doing too many intricate things. You're just playing good dudes and good removal, and yeah, it's like a really good arena deck.
All right. Final deck, I guess, segment or question here is, have any of you guys thought of a good rogue deck so far? Anybody? Any rogue deck that has any kind of potential?
I mean, I think that Oil Rogue is still reasonably good. Like, I don't think any of the new cards are necessarily cards that are going to spawn a new Rogue deck, but Oil Rogue is still a strong deck.
I feel really bad for Rogue. Like, Miracle was so fun, even though so many people hated it. And it's... Rogue's in a position now where it's a lot like the old Priest, where you have to draw a lot of these 2-card combos to get ahead in a game. And sometimes they're not enough, and you're playing a lot of underpowered stuff, and it's a bit frustrating that it got an entire expansion without a single new card. Nothing is objectively like good, Something like Totem Golem is just good. I'll put it in all my decks. Something like I don't know, Darnassus Aspirant is really good. I'll put it in all my Druid decks. But like Druid is already in a good spot, I feel like Rogue could have used a card that's just good, and they got like playable stuff, like another 5-drop as if you didn't have enough already, and I wish that the class got something just a bit better, I guess. The thing about Oil Rogue is, even if you don't change a single card in it, which is probably the optimal build right now, is to play 0 TGT cards. The way the metagame shifted is not bad for it, because I think it's pretty good against Paladin. So, yeah.
I did actually play against a Rogue yesterday who got Lightwell off of a Shredder, then Burgled got Holy Champion, and like something else that like basically just suddenly got a growing Holy Champion against me that like ultimately became like 12 power and killed me after he sabotaged my Ysera. So that's basically a new card, Sabotage, right? I haven't seen that before. But
Burgle, as if Thought Steal was too good,
Burgle's fun, man. You get some really fun cards from that. Trump, any experimentation you've done with Rogue at all?
I just echo what those two said. +1.
+1. All right, cool. All right, let's just talk really briefly about metagame. Transition over to metagame, and you've seen the meta report for this week, and actually a lot of decks were added to the meta report this week, the Tempo Storm one. So curious what you guys think of the metagame right now. We talked a lot about Paladin. Paladin's obviously really, really popular, but any other classes or decks that rival it right now, or just any other classes rival the Paladin right now?
Patron's probably better.
I think Patron's still a better deck than the Secret Paladin deck. I think it's more powerful.
Yeah.
Paladin is certainly the deck that I'm running into the most by far on ladder. Like, looking at my stats right now, like, I've played against at least twice as much Paladin as any other class.
Wow.
Since TGT, and most of their classes, other than Paladin, most of their classes are actually like fairly even. Like, haven't played against very much Rogue or Shaman, but everything else is like kind of in the mix. Like, with Paladin by far and away the most popular.
Yeah, I think Rogue has been the least popular.
Yeah. What do you guys think of Druid?
It's good.
Yeah,
I don't know why
Darnassus
Aspirant is in the game, but it's good.
I think Druid got a lot better with
Yeah.
the inclusion of Darnassus Aspirant. I think one of the biggest weaknesses of Druid for a long time was just its incredible reliance on wild growth, and the fact that you could very easily just draw hands that you just hero power go, hero power go, hero power go, because you just have this really high end hand. Now it's kind of you run the risk of drawing the all mana acceleration hand, because if you're playing double wild growth, double Darnassus Aspirant, double Innervate, you can kind of more easily run out of gas. But I do think overall it makes the deck a lot stronger, because it's more important that you're able to actually get in the board and do something than it is that you necessarily have powerful plays throughout the game.
So I was just looking over here at Tempo Storm for the meta snapshot so I could see the metagame and become legendary. And the one thing that a lot of people are kind of curious about, certainly I'm curious about, is how Mech Mage is tier 1. Secondly, I clicked it and I was like looking at the matchups here, and it seems like only 3 of them are above 50%.
Yeah, so the meta snapshot, right? Every single time somebody reads it, they give criticism like that. And basically, in a nutshell, if you were to pick those decks on those tiers and play them on ladder right now, they're rated by how well you would perform. So it's not about like how many matchups are good, it's about like which matchups are the most popular and how good that deck is against the popular ones. So Paladin's really popular, Mech Mage is good against that. That's going to swing it into being a really high tier pick for this week. That's kind of how it operates.
So Druid, you don't think is tier 1 at all?
I think it's close, but it's like the issue is like what's it good against? It's still weak to Patron. Well, I personally think it's weak to Patron, and some people say it's close. Some people think Druid's favored, but it's definitely weak to Paladin, I think. So those are like, and Mech Mage, like all these decks that get on board early, their Darnassus Aspirant helps, but they're still like rough matchups. So.
Well, some versions have Living Root and the Combatant too, right? The 4-drop.
Yeah.
What do you think of those 2 cards?
Combatant's better than it looks, but it's still like 4 health is so bad in Hearthstone. 4 health is like the worst amount of health you can have besides 1 health. It dies to everything. Everything. There's so few cards in the game that deal 3 damage. There's like Wrath and Frostbolt, and everything deals 4. Shredder, True Silver, Death's Bite, Abusive plus every 2-drop / 1-drop. Like it's so easy to deal 4 damage. You can even deal 3 damage plus run like a 1 attack, or 3 damage plus hero power. It just dies to everything is what I'm saying, and it's hard to like snowball a game off of it unless you're playing against a deck with no like ways to interact with a 5/4. But I don't think there's any deck like that,
Mm-hmm. Right.
I've actually been pretty impressed seeing Savage Combatant actually in play. It's very, very powerful when you're ahead, but it's weak when you're behind for the reasons that Reynad's talking about. And in that sense, like as a Druid card, Druid, in some ways it's great at getting ahead because of the acceleration. But in the games where you don't see your acceleration and you're trying to play from behind, if you have Savage Combatant in your deck instead of something like Yeti or whatever other thing you might have in that spot, or even just some other sort of cheap removal spell like Living Roots, you'll end up being punished for it. I have actually seen a big variety of different Druid decks since TGT2. Like even in the last call tournament that I was doing commentary for last weekend, there was a player who was playing a really aggressive Druid deck with like Druid of the Saber, and like we saw Power of the Wilds and Violet Teachers all of a sudden again, and Living Roots not just as a removal spell but as a way to pump out early guys for pressure. And I think that Druid is finally in a spot like again where it has multiple viable builds, which for a while it was basically okay. What do you play, an Azure Drake or a Sludge Belcher? And basically every Druid deck looked the same other than that.
Yeah. General speed of the meta right now, you guys happy with it? Too slow, too fast?
Too fast, but I think everyone will always complain too fast.
I was gonna say, I think almost all the time, like people were like, I wish I had more time to do cool stuff.
Yeah.
In the slower on average the metagame is, the more chances you have to like get your combos together and play like wacky, fun, powerful cards like Confessor Paltris or whatever else. But I actually think that the speed of the metagame right now, it's not like blazing fast, uninteractive speed. Like I think that when decks like say Face Hunter are super popular, that ends up being kind of unfun because there's less things that you can do to interact with them. Like minion based strategies like Paladin, you can at least play taunts and play things to kill their minions and stuff like that, and you feel like you're playing Hearthstone as opposed to just having kill commands pointed at your face.
Yeah, I'd say like the first 5 days of the Grand Tournament release is probably the most fun I've ever had playing Hearthstone. The format slowed down a lot. Everyone was playing the experimental decks, and those just turned out to be a bit slower. I don't think the format is as fast as, like, on a scale of history where formats speed are taken into account. This is probably one of the slower ones, I'd like to say. Secret Paladin isn't that fast is probably my main argument, and you're seeing a lot of that deck basically, and I think that deck can be countered.
I think that like the turn that deck kills you is pretty slow, but the turn that deck wins the game is very fast. Like a lot of times, turn 4, the board will be so lost to the point where it's impossible to recover. That even if it takes them to like turn 9 to kill you, it still feels pretty quick. But yeah, it probably has been faster before. Early beta for sure. Old Blood Imp and Pyroblast.
Blood Imp. Oh man, those are the good days.
Yeah, to this day, that's the most broken card that's ever existed in Hearthstone. Is the old Blood Imp. It's not even close.
That was just like the stealthier guys have +1 or whatever.
Yeah, +1 health.
Yeah,
All
everything
AoE
had
and
+1 health.
useless.
Yeah.
It was like it was a 1-mana, one-sided Thalia is what it was. Like you couldn't kill anything. Like it's actually just gross.
Yeah, all the board removal pretty much was like
Druid had
whirlwind and stuff like that.
Romancer Claw. Like so.
Okay, well, I think that concludes all the topics that we had today. So we're just going to go straight into some questions from you guys in the community. Those of you that already submitted your questions, I'll be picking from them. Again, it's on ChanManV.tv if you want to see just the questions that we're looking at. First off, let's go with... all right, so there's been a lot of talk. There's always talk about RNG, right? Do you think RNG is any worse right now than it's been in the past, or do you think there are some key cards that are RNG based that are being played at a high level and is affecting competitive play a lot? Reynad. We'll start with Reynad on this one.
Where can I start, man? Knife Juggler, and probably the most egregious example is Knife Juggler. It's so it's costed in a way that you have to play it in every single aggressive deck, and actually the strength of Knife Juggler reflects the strength of Gormok in a lot of ways because of how easy it is to generate a bunch of dudes as more and more cards get released. But anyway, so yeah, it's in every aggro deck, and based on what it juggles, you decide who wins the game, who wins tens of thousands of dollars. Animal Companion, same thing. That card has gotten less problematic because of more early game existing now, but like the difference of rolling Huffer and not Huffer still decides the game to the point where 66% of the time that card's played, one player is upset, which I don't think is a good experience.
Right.
There have been cards like that in Magic, like Invisible Stalker, that it's not a good experience, I think. Same thing with Juggler. Every time that card is played, one player is pissed off. I don't know. I wish it would be a 2/2. I've been saying that since before Next Ramus. But that's about it. I mean, Implosion and Unstable Portal, probably the only other two bad ones. Yeah.
Okay. Trump?
Yeah, I don't think as much as the Grand Tournament has Joust, I think it would have been reasonable design to make them more like Tuskar Jouster, where they're aimed at beating aggressive decks, but they're costed like okay. And I think that kind of RNG is perfectly fine. When I think about the Grand Tournament, there's actually not that much. There is Ram Wrangler, which is a big deal, and if it had seen more play, that would be a really big swinging card.
Yeah.
Let's see. Other than that, it's kind of the same old. One thing worth mentioning, I suppose, is Secret Paladin has very little RNG in it, other than, of course, the aforementioned Knife Juggler, and Patron Warrior has almost no RNG, I'd say. But
Avenge, yeah.
It is a lot about just... Oh, one thing I will say is, let's see, there have been some people who like point out certain RNG. Like I was recently at the Geico tournament, and a lot of people are actually like sympathizing with me. Oh man, Trump, you lost to some horrible RNG. Like Spellslinger got preparation.
Oh yeah.
Patron Warrior did so much damage to your face. But those are like the big, and I had a tough time vocalizing it, like what this was, whether or not this is a problem, and I still do. But basically, it comes down to there are a lot of small hidden plays, and what you often see and where there's a lot of outcry is when the big flashy stuff happens. But that's like so much rarer than the small plays turn by turn, the slight plays you can make better or worse, of which even in tournament play, people are making like maybe a few each game. Like there's always slightly better plays that you can make, and that's what really decides games for the most part still. So that's good.
No, I agree with that. In tournament play, what decides who wins is mostly matchup and the plays that are made. But the RNG still, like, on cards like Knife Juggler, like, too early in the game, I feel like volatile RNG is bad.
Brian, what's acceptable RNG and not acceptable? This is a question from Zachary Tyndall, by the way.
I think that you know, there's when you play a card game competitively, you're buying into a certain level of variance and random elements influencing the outcome of any game because you're drawing cards from a deck. Hearthstone, I think, actually needs cards that add levels of randomness to it because otherwise the game is pretty deterministic and linear because it's direct attacking and guaranteed resources and you have this hero power you can use every turn. I think if there weren't cards like Animal Companion or Knife Juggler or Implosion or Spellslinger or Unstable Portal or whatever else, that games would feel super, super similar all the time and no one would really get excited about anything. And I do agree that like people will have this massive outcry over, you know, oh, he rolled Huffer again, he rolled this, he got this off of Unstable or Spellslinger or whatever, when in reality, you know, so many games are decided, you know, much more by, as the two others were saying, just people playing marginally better than others. And I think that people really undersell how many decisions there are in any given game of Hearthstone and how much of an edge players can have. Lots of people just sort of think of there are, you know, like the correct play and then misplays. And I actually hate the fact that like misplay is just a term that people use so often because in so many cases it's like there's a variety of different plays that you can make. Mm-hmm. And you know each of them has particular value in, you know, whatever, based on whatever, you know, various factors involved. And it's not necessarily clear cut that this is the right play, this is a misplay. You need to, you know, be considering a lot of various things that aren't necessarily even clear to most of the time spectators, commentators, whoever. So I think that like the level of randomness in Hearthstone is fine, and I think that like in many cases people like who are complaining about it are just sort of undermining themselves. It's like, why should anyone, you know, like people who are like professional Hearthstone players who, you know, spend most of their time after events like complaining about how unlucky they got. It's like you're largely undermining your own sort of authority in this sense. It's like the reason people watch this is because they feel like you are some authority in this space, and if you think that all that matters is randomness, then what are you even doing here?
It's not the only thing that matters, but at a high level, like honestly, like how many mistakes are going to be made at a high level? It's like, I think like Trump said, it's like 2 to 3 a game. Not mistakes, but whatever, suboptimal plays. It's I don't know. I think cards like Animal Companion and Knife Juggler don't inspire excitement when they're played. I think cards like Unstable Portal and Spellslinger do, because they make these unique things happen that you just don't see in competitive play. So I think the cards with like a big spread where there's like 300 plus outcomes, or like even Shredder where there's like 70 outcomes or something, those cards are exciting. Those are cool. Cool things happen. Yeah, Doomsayer is frustrating, but it's like 1 out of 60. Right. It's more like the cards where like Implosion or Knife Juggler where like one player is upset every time. I think that's a bad experience. And I don't think that I'm on the edge of my seat to see whether Leok or Huffer is rolled on turn 2. I think
it's hard to pinpoint too, because a card like Brawl is also, I think, completely fine. Sometimes it leaves their biggest minion, but it's like the things where you usually have some kind of control to the end. Like you usually would have a plan to like kill the opponent's last minion if it survives from Brawl, or you know, you sometimes do it as a desperation play. It's hard to vocalize what makes good RNG, and you'd probably have to like sit down and study it a lot, or like just run it through like a test crowd or something. But it's difficult.
Well, Sanders Coleman actually has kind of a follow-up to this, which is, do you think some cards should be banned in some official tournaments or maybe some unique tournaments.
I think that
Blizzard
banning
never.
cards in a digital game makes absolutely no sense. Like
Yeah.
if you think that the card shouldn't be allowed in gameplay, you should change it or not make it in the first place. I think that if like fans want to run events, they think
Yeah.
Animal Companion, Knife Juggler, Huffer, whatever, Doctor Boom are too good, too random, whatever. They can run their own events. But I think that from the perspective of Blizzard and sort of official Hearthstone organized play, it makes no sense to ban cards whatsoever.
Yeah, I agree with that. I think there was a time when we were wanting, like a few organizers were wanting to run tournaments with a Leroy band back when he cost 4 mana, and Blizzard was really unhappy with that because like to sanction events like that is saying that they acknowledge that something is wrong with their game. And outside of just Blizzard being unhappy with it, I think that like it's just their philosophy. They want to introduce new cards, which they've been doing pretty quickly now. And that's awesome, and just waiting for the metagame to fix itself. And in a lot of ways, it has. And I think that after 3 or 4 expansions, maybe Knife Juggler is just... Maybe there's so many 2-drops that Knife Juggler just isn't good enough anymore. And I really hope that happens quickly. Like, that's going to be the solution to those cards, because they're just not going to be changed, I think.
Well, I actually, like, I think that in some decks, like a card like King's Elec, I think that like it's reasonable to argue that like you might want to play King's Elec over Knife Juggler in some Hunter decks now. I do think the fact that there are lots of decks that play wide to the board and you have Unleash means that that's probably wrong right now.
Yeah.
Right.
But one of the it was basically for Knife Juggler was just the best 2-drop period, even if you didn't really care about its effect for a lot of decks. So it was part of far more games than it would be if there were more options, basically.
Mm-hmm.
I think that with decks that have cards like Unleash, cards like Implosion, cards like Muster, you're probably going to still play Knife Juggler. But I think that the introduction of more cards, it's more likely to see a card like that kind of get phased out when there's more attractive options based on what your deck really wants to do.
I should put Knife Juggler in my Priest deck and give it a 2-drop. Be good.
They have Knife Juggler for Priest deck. It's called Flame Juggler.
Flame Juggler?
Flame Juggler. Yeah.
That's the Knife Juggler of the Priest.
Oh, man. Yeah. All right, next up, let's see. We've got... Actually, a question for you, Brian. Will you ever make a total switch to Hearthstone?
Will I ever make a total switch to Hearthstone?
Yeah.
I mean, for me, I spend more of my time playing Hearthstone than I do playing Magic by like a lot now. But I still, I still love Magic. Magic has been sort of responsible for most of the best elements of my life, most of my good friends, my like job that I've had for years and years. And I mean, I'm in the Magic Hall of Fame, so I can just go to the Pro Tours and not have to worry about trying to qualify for them and everything if I don't want to attend more events. So it's unlikely that I ever like just stop playing Magic whatsoever. But I mean, the amount of time that I spend on Hearthstone now is pretty close to full time as it is. So. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, that last question was from Janik Bergman. And all right, for you, Trump here, from Sparkly Una, do you think silence mechanic will eventually completely lose value, especially in the light of the fact that minions with new mechanics keep getting introduced in the game and get included into decks?
Short answer, no. Long answer, suppose that the minions were to... Well, actually, it is possible for silence to lose value. That would happen in the case where spells became really good and or minions came up in a way that like couldn't be silenced. For example, Druid of the Claw, like where it would basically just come in with big stats and then you choose and not be a buff. Or like very minor buffs, like all the Dragon Priest cards. I don't think there's not many targets to silence there, other than Chilmaw, really. Going off of just quick memory. Yeah, a lot of decks right now are really considering not running the Owl because, of course, a 2-mana 2/1 is really bad. And it's often a choice of, oh man, do I want to add that extra utility? Is it even out there? So even right now, that choice is being made. So it entirely depends on whether or not like big effects need to be silenced.
Do we need more silence minions?
God, no.
No, it's I think it needs to be in the game, like just to give certain decks options against things that they would have a hard time dealing with. Priest has a hard time dealing with Sylvanas, for example, even if I don't. play silence in my priest deck, it's nice to have the option. But yeah, it's just one of those effects that's going to like rotate in and out of the metagame depending on how good it is, how many important death rattles there are, how difficult it is for your deck to deal with them. It'd be cool to have like a priest 2/1 for 2 that silenced a minion. You like chose to silence a minion or give it 2 extra health. But that's more of a druid effect. I don't know. But yeah, it doesn't need to be more really. I don't think.
Well, I think there does need to eventually be more because they haven't introduced one for a while. I mean, they did introduce one in this set. Props to anyone who can think of it.
Yeah, silence a demon.
Yeah, silence.
Oh,
a demon.
silence a demon.
Silence a
oh my god!
But it's just
card?
the volume of
Forgot
cards.
about
Like
that.
they probably do need to put a silence in here eventually, and it does need to be kind of a general check against like something incredibly unfair that could happen, such as Deathlord Divine Spirit. If the threat of silence weren't there, then that would be a real thing.
I mean, why do they need to be more though? Like there already if you want silence, you have options to play Owl or Spellbreaker, no matter what class you are. Like I don't know if you need more of them. You know, like those are gonna, unless those cards go away, you still have that as sort of a fallback worst case scenario.
You do, but it just feels like as there are more cards, there should also be like maybe one more silence option.
I don't know. I actually think silence is like one of the lamest parts of Hearthstone. Like I recognize it's a safety valve and it's pretty important that it exists, but I think that if there are a significant number of popular and efficient ways to silence minions, it means that you like the coolest part of cards, which is their abilities, like their card text, is easy to eliminate, and that's lame. Like if you know things like divine spiriting your Deathlord are just totally worthless because everyone always has a significant number of silences, you know, then no one will ever try to do these cool things, and everything is just about the raw stats of minions, and that's what's actually the least fun about Hearthstone is how much the numbers on cards matter, and when things get silenced, that's all that matters is the numbers on the cards.
Yeah, that's a good point. All right, last question we have right here is Robert Acevedo for Reynad. Lord of the Arena is the only tournament of its kind, but few and far between. Many talented arena players haven't had the opportunity to participate over popular constructed players. Would you consider making it a regular event?
Okay.
Convinced me.
I mean, it happens. I mean, it happened. How many have we had now? We've had 3 or 4, right? How many Lord of the Rings have we had?
We've had 4.
4, right? Okay, I mean, that's...
Yeah, I mean, it's really hard to run a tournament. I'm so picky
exactly.
because like if you run it bad, it's so bad for like the reputation of the brand. Like with Tempestrom, I think we're both the least safe and the most safe with how we run tournaments. Like I always make sure that the people most experienced and best at it are the ones making everything happen. Everything's micromanaged to the point where down to the graphics and the people involved, it like runs smoothly. Ever since the first couple that I organized myself, I just realized like the need for people that are better than me at doing it, like more organized and everything. And so like as far as the production, it's very safe every time. Like there are people that are competent running it, which is important. But then like for the format itself, it's always we go out there, you know, like we're the only people doing arena stuff, we're the only people doing like Challenge Stone and stuff with Crip and all that. It's hard to, I guess, find the resources to do a regular event of any sort that meets quality standards. Like I would like to do Lord of the Arena way more often than we have been. It was like the first, to my knowledge, like streamer run tournament ever. It was like 2 years ago or something we did it, or a year and a half, and it's still around to this day. People still like it, but yeah, I'd like to branch it out and have it give exposure to the great arena players that you don't see as much on streams and stuff. You know, we've tried to do that a bit. We've had guys like Guardsman Bob on it. We've had like Ratsma
this last time, yeah.
Yeah, but yeah, it'd be cool to do it more often. It's just it's hard to justify like, okay, do I do more Lord of the Arenas or do I find like another cool type of format that no one's doing and do that? Because there's so many things you can do with Hearthstone that is not a conquest league like every other company is doing, and it's like, yeah, like I don't know, like for me personally, I don't care what the prize money is behind an event. I care about because as a viewer, you're not getting any of that money. Who cares if it's $500,000 or if it's 3,000, right? It doesn't matter. You want to see a cool event with a cool format that hasn't been seen before. That's exciting to watch. So that's the important thing for me. Is like I'd like to do more Lord of the Arenas, yes, but hopefully we can do that as well as like new cool formats on top of it.
Yep, couldn't agree with you more. There's still plenty of things, ideas that are out there that haven't been executed yet. So excited to see what else Tempo Storm has to come out in the near future. But I think that's going to be it, guys. I think we'll wrap up the show now and have you guys do some shout-outs, plugs, whatever you guys want to do. Trump, you want to start off?
Hi, I'm Trump. This is a good show.
Yes. Brian?
Yeah, no, nothing in particular in mind, but thanks for having me on. This was fun. It was kind of amusing that under the show Value Town, which has actually been the team name.
Yeah, exactly.
Well,
Well,
you
you guys
competing under
right
for the ATLC, which we actually leave for tomorrow.
Mm-hmm.
So, everyone in chat who may want to come cheer Trump and I on, that will be later this week. So be sure to check that out.
Yeah, definitely good luck to you two with that. And so for a lot of money, too. It's going to be pretty big. It's in Dallas, right?
We're Plano, in fact.
Plano, yeah, Plano. It's a little north of Dallas.
Right outside Dallas. But
Yeah.
amusingly, I actually have family that lives there. So
Wow. Okay.
Yeah. So hopefully I'll see them sometime, at the event. Then they'll also be at my wedding the following weekend.
Oh, you're getting married? I didn't know.
I am, yeah.
Oh,
Next time.
congrats, man.
Oh, thank you.
I didn't know that. That'd be cool. You going to stream it?
The umpteenth person to ask. We considered it, but I don't think the venue. It's like a winery. They don't think they have good enough internet.
Oh, okay. Let's do that. That might have been the biggest Hearthstone stream we have this year. That could have been interesting. Reynad, anything? Plugs? Shoutouts?
Shout out to you, Chris, for coming back. I mean, it's awesome to have Valley Town, back. I don't know how often you're gonna do it, but that's cool to have like a good podcast thing for sure, or not like it's just like a talk show.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, thanks for having me on. Thank you for referencing TempoStrum.com's MetaSnapshot TM for all of your becoming legendary needs. Good website, not the best. I do personally get bored from time to time from winning too much after using it, at which point I have to buy a variety of other games at reasonable prices at G2A.com using the Tempo.
He is a master. He's legendary at promo.
Thank you. And yeah, shout out to Twitch, Funk, Namecheap, all of our sponsors. And yeah, that's all I got.
All right,
if
man.
If you're at ATLC, cheer on Tempo Storm if any of you guys are going to be there. Yeah,
no. Yeah, it's going to be a pretty good rivalry there. It'll be good stuff. But yeah, I want to thank you three for coming on. It's been an amazing discussion. I know the community's been really excited about seeing you three really talk through the cards, at least some of these cards for the first time together. So really great and happy with the episode. I know a lot of people have been asking like how regular I'm going to do this. Honestly, I didn't have any plans, like set plans going into this episode. I just wanted to see how it kind of felt really just doing this again. And I think it went well. So I can tell you that it felt really good, and I plan on doing more. I can't really commit to like every week yet, but every week is a definite possibility. I'll at least say that. But definitely more Value Towns to come, and hopefully some more great guests like these guys. So VODs, guys, if you missed any of the shows, will be on youtube.com/ChanManV. I'll have them up shortly after the show. I didn't get a chance to get them going during the show like I used to, just because I'm not used to that yet. But I'll definitely post them right after this, and then so you can check them out there. But until then, guys, for Trump, Reynad, Brian Kibler, and myself, ChanManV, we'll see you next time. Later.